Welcome to War Games on Toast, all of you lovely people. I am once again back, and today I am doing another TTS battle report. This time it's my Kruleboyz with a different list against the Gloomspite Gitz. More specifically, a list that is full of Gobapalooza and full of trogs. It should be a really fun blast, so let's dive into those lists. So starting off with my dagger, I have a Bolt Boy boss, a Gut Ripper and Shank. In my hammer, I have a Brute boss with +1 attack on his blessing, Brugit, and another Gut Ripper. And finally, in my shield, I have a Rock Gut Troggoth with +1 attack, a Stab Grot, and a Gut Ripper. And over to my opponent's list, he has a Scaremonger plus a Rock Gut Troggoth in his dagger, a Boggle Eye plus a Rock Gut Troggoth in his hammer, and a Brugit, a Loon Boss, and a Rock Gut Troggoth in his shield. All of the Troggoths come with +1 movement. This is very much a thick boy Troggoth list based on the popular Stormcast Eternal list, but running it with goblins and trolls, which is a lot of fun to behold, and it should lead to a pretty interesting game because we've got two very smashy lists. But with all that out of the way, let's dive into the mission and the board. For this game, we have some pretty darn open terrain. The edges do have some ruins with some light elevations here and there in the top and bottom left or right corners. And there's a lot of scatter terrain centered in the middle of the board. This makes it very difficult to get shots off with ranged troops, aka my Bolt Boy boss. It basically gives Garred's warband a decently high chance to be in some sort of cover, nerfing all of my hit rolls. Not that he necessarily needs it, since his list is shockingly tanky for a goblin list. Those 3 trogs at this point in the game did seem quite daunting. In terms of deployment, my opponent did actually win the roll-off for priority and chooses to nab the red deployment, as this prevents me from setting up in the bottom right-hand corner with my Bolt Boy boss. This is a pretty sound play here, even if it does mean he is deploying his forces first. Important to note as well, in this game, the dagger deployments, which are the long edge deployments, are coming in on turn 2, and we're starting with our shields and our hammers coming in on turn 1. And on to deployment, we have his hammer coming in. We did this wrong actually, it should be shields first, but I actually messed up this one. He places his Trog and his, I believe that's a Boggle Eye, and then I place my Brute Boss, my Brugit, and my Gut Ripper, trying to really pressure this middle area. He has a bunch of guys coming in on his shield and dagger, trolls mostly, and I want this Brute Boss to get in there and kill them all. And then we have his shield, and we have a Loon Boss, a Trog, and his Brugit. The Brugit is pretty dangerous, but if the Trog dies, the Brugit becomes mostly useless, and that is who I'm gunning for early on. And then I deploy my shield, and I've got a lot to think about here. What do I want to do? And I decide I really want to clog up that hammer troll and try and make sure it can't join up with the rest of the group. Or at the very least, if he chooses to go in with the shields later on, I can at least surround and enclose the his entire warband with brute bosses and trogs, and that is not a good place for him to be in. So I think this is actually a pretty solid location to be in, and it pressures him on multiple locations. And then onto initiative, I roll a double and 4 singles, and then he rolls a quad and 2 singles. So I have initiative, but he has a powerful quad in his belt here. I choose to just bank this wild dice. I have no use for it, and early on I am planning to play really cagey. So, you know, I'll let him do what he wants to do, then turn 2 I'll be blasting in. He decides to make a cheeky double, which I think is probably a mistake. We're not going to get into combat turn 1, and yeah, I think he should have probably banked there. So I go first, and I immediately wait with a Gut Ripper down south. I want him to show me his hand, and then I will react to that. I have the activation advantage, so it doesn't matter. He then uses Brugit to buff up his Trog, which is expected. He now has 6 attacks, which is a bit too spicy for me to engage with early on, so I'm definitely going to be hanging back and letting him waste that double. He then waits with Brugit, which makes sense. I then wait with my Gut Ripper, and he goes over his Loon Boss. He's looking to use his triple to give everyone +1 attack, and also just get out of range of all my nasty guys, and just moves over there. I then wait with my stab grot down the bottom here. He then moves his Trog and decides to not engage my Trog and instead move into his own +1 attack bubble, which is exactly what I wanted to do. With +1 move, because of the blessing, he can move 10 and easily gets there and goes into my little ball of soon-to-be-dead models. I activate this Gut Ripper who waited earlier, and he just moves up 4 inches to take this quarter and maybe do things next turn. He then uses his Boggle Eye and then finds just a perfect place to move him using the 3D movement tool and just runs through this door and then swaps over. I then wait with Brewgate because I want to see what he's doing. He has a lot of things going on and I just don't want any part of it. I want him to do all of his things and I'll start moving my big pieces in. He then waits with his Brewgate a second time, and then I move my Brewgate up here just to support the Brute Boss at a later date. And that ends his activation. His Trog then waits and I activate Rush and then move up my Brute Boss. The Brute Boss is now completely safe from any attacks from the Trog this turn, so he just runs up 8 inches and gets into range to possibly threaten him next turn, which is exactly what I want to see. Then, because there's nothing left to activate, I move my Trog up and get within 1.1 inches of him, so he's forced to move to me if he wants to attack, and this works for me perfectly because then I have Cunning Trap next turn to clobber him on the approach. So I'm just trying to get into the exact range here. I've got 8 inches of movement, so I can very easily get within that 1.1 and have plenty of movement to spare. Then the Stab Grot moves up into the perfect location, so no matter where this troll moves, I will be able to attack with a Cunning Trap Smack from my own troll. This puts his troll in a very difficult position as to what to do and puts a lot of pressure on the board. Now he does have some guys coming in from the south here, so I've moved this little gripper here just to basically block them off, make it much harder for them to get in. And that is the end of Battle Round 1. Overall, it was pretty uneventful. He did a lot of buffing that didn't pay off, and I did a lot of waiting to see what he was doing so I could react with my strong units and get into position safely, so on round 2 I can come in and then smash his guys to pieces. Currently, I think he's in a much worse position than I am. It'll be very hard for him to spread out and take quarters, and I have a much more powerful piece in the Brute Boss to kill his trolls. But over at Battle Round 2, we roll for initiative, and I have a triple and 3 singles, which is perfect quad bait, and I have 2 wild dice because I banked. He has 2 doubles and 4 singles, and he chooses to make a second double. That's a double 6 and a double 5. With this in mind, I go and make a quad 4, basically for Rampage. And then, because I don't really care about initiative yet, because I'm pretty sure he's going to do some buffs at the start, which is a bad tempo play, I am going to make a double. Reinforcements come on, and his Scaremonger and a Trog move on. My Bolt Boy boss gets into position here, making sure he's in range of just about everything. That 15-inch range is nasty. Then I place this Gut Ripper in the perfect location. It takes a bit of finagling here, but he gets in the perfect position where if anyone moves towards that Gut Ripper, there's a fairly high chance I can actually get a shot off with my Bolt Boy boss, which is very nice. And then the last little location model to place is Shank. And frankly, I don't have much use for Shank in this early game. He's very much more a piece to net someone in the late game to prevent them from moving onto key locations to take a quarter. So really, I just want to kind of be a bit safe here and just not get involved in the combats. Now, he starts with his Boggle Eye, and he really wants to get my Brute Boss shut down and unable to attack this turn, which is honestly a fantastic idea. He has a double 6, which gives Mesmerize a 6-inch range, and with a bit of finagling on his movement, he can definitely get within that range. And on a 3+, a lot of things will start going very, very wrong for me. So he goes and he rolls a big fat 1, which is devastating because the brute boss is now completely free to move. This is the issue with nets. They're very powerful, but they are not guaranteed most of the time. Seeing how he has got no buffs set up, and he has 2 buffs to set up, I decided to take a bit of a slower tempo play and move the Brugit up and then use my own Loon Shrine potion to buff up my brute boss. This gives him 7 total attacks, which is very, very nice. And then he ends his movement by shimmying back to the bottom corner there. But I have a bit of a finagle. There's a lot of things I could do here. But ultimately, I do settle on just running back into where he started from, really, because I don't want Brugit to die. Not so much for his potion, but more because he's a model I can use to contest or hold objectives. So yeah, he just runs away, and that's all fine. So his Trog moves up to engage the Gut Ripper here. His actual target is to get to that Stab Grot, but because I've placed my Gut Ripper here for a very specific reason, he can't get close enough to attack. This means that basically his other troll can't safely move to attack my troll, and it really limits his options on this south flank. In the end, he just settles there, unable to attack the Stab Grot, and takes a spicy little swing over at the Gut Ripper. I choose not to Cunning Trap here, but with the Stab Grot, but instead I just choose to use a counter. I could have Cunning Trapped, it might have been a good idea, but I chose against it in the end. So he rolls to attack, and I take 6 damage, and he takes 2 in return, which is pretty nice. I'm not going to complain there. It could have been a lot worse, and he does take 2 for his trouble, so not a bad use of a counter. And now it's time for the main event. I use my Rampage on the Brute Boss, and that Rampage 4 is very important because it lets me move 4 inches, which puts me in range to attack this Trog 3 times. That's 7 attacks on the first swing, which is going to be pretty damn nice. So 7 attacks, hitting on 6s, although that is reduced down to 6 attacks because he uses his Trog Fart. But that's still 15 damage on the first swing, which is half his health in a single attack. I then attack 4 more times. He chooses not to fart, and I land another 9 damage. On the last attack, he does choose to fart, but it doesn't matter because I swing in for another 12 damage, killing that Trog outright, which is exactly what I expected to see with a Strength 6 Brute Boss. His Brugit then puts up a Loon Shrine potion on his Trog to give his Trog a bit of a fighting chance against the Brute Boss before moving up to engage the Brute Boss because he wants to lock him down and because he's in range to get a few sneaky attacks. Brugit's not great on the offense. He does get 4 attacks, hitting on 5s, and he gets 6 damage with 2 lucky crits, which is very nasty, but the Brute Boss does have a whopping 30 wounds, so it's not too bad. The Bolt Boy boss activates next, and he takes a sneaky shot at this Trog. I'm just going to fast roll this and roll 6 dice. We're hitting on 5s, and 6s are very, very nice here. So with those 6 shots, I land a pretty respectable 8 damage, which I am all for, bringing that Trog all the way down to 20 wounds, which is well within Brute Boss kill range. His Trog then finagles into range to attack the Brute Boss with his 6 attacks. We rolled 7 because we forgot the buff from the Loon Boss wasn't active, and he lands 6 damage, which is pretty low rolling actually, so it's not too bad for me. This Loon Boss is unfortunately within my Trog's smack range, so he just moves up and he gets swinging. So 4-inch movement, he moves up. It's a little bit finagling around that terrain to try and get close, but with the pre-measure there, this should definitely be in range. And then when you get swinging, there's a very high chance this Loon Boss could die. But he does go with the pile in here to move Boggle Eye into combat as well, just to tie up this Trog, which is fine. I go in and I swing for a whopping 12 damage. Now, Loon Bosses aren't that tough. They only have 16 wounds. So he takes a solid hit here before swinging back and does no damage in return, so the Trog is absolutely fine. I have all the activations left, so I move this Gut Ripper into range of the Loon Boss. Realizing he has a 2-inch range, I actually move into engagement range, so I'm trying to encourage this Loon Boss to attack my Gut Ripper, so I can counter and then possibly kill him on a counter reaction, which would be very, very fun. And then he goes with this, his little scaremonger here, and I missed an opportunity here to do 2 cunning traps with my dude, but it happens. That could have been a pretty serious spike there. And then I move my Gut Rippers and my Shank just to contest this lower corner because nothing's in it, so might as well. And then with my final action, I attack with my Gut Ripper on the Scaremonger. It's only 2 attacks, hitting on 4s, I believe. So we roll it off, and I get 4 damage, which is very nice. That's a sneaky little crit. And then the Stab Grot goes in too. He gets 3 attacks, hitting on 5s, attacking twice. And I land a sneaky crit as well for another 3 damage. That's 7 damage on the Scaremonger, bringing him below half health, which is very, very nice. At the end of Battle Round 2, this game is very much looking to be in my favour. There's a lot of stuff going on that is just good. I have my Brute Boss in combat with that Troll. My Troll is going to kill his Loon Boss. And with only a few more kills, this game's a guaranteed win because he won't have enough guys to contest and hold the quarters. So this is very much leaning in my favour, but we'll see what happens in the 3rd battle round here. So we roll for initiative again, and I get a triple 6 and 3 singles, which is very nice for me, and he gets 3 doubles. We both have 1 wild dice, but I spent first, and I of course just make a quad. There's definitely play in getting a double here, but I'm a bit hungry for kills, so I go with the Rampage, and then he goes and he makes a triple 2 to allow, I believe, a buff on his Loon Boss, which does make sense. His Loon Boss needs to skedaddle and get some kills in, buff his guys. So I start with my Brute Boss going first, and he just rampages. He's going straight into the Stroll. He swings for 12 damage. He chooses not to fart on any of these attacks. That's only 9 damage. So he's only on, like, he's near death now. And that's another 18 damage, which kills the Troll outright. Which leaves the Brute Boss with 2 Troll heads to his name, and that ends his turn. We then go over the Loon Boss, who attacks the Gut Ripper and deals a whopping 0 damage. Now, I did use counter, and he takes 5 damage in return, which is actually enough to kill the wounded Loon Boss, which is a massive blow to his future prospects of victory. That's another dead model for him. And then the Troll goes and just lays into Boggle-Eye here. It's an easy kill. It should go down in 1 or 2 hits. So he tries to use counter, and it does work. I do take 2 damage, but he takes 12, which is actually enough to kill him in a single swing, which is very good for me. And then the Trog moves over and then piles into the Brugit just to make sure it can't escape. That'll be another quick and easy kill next turn. So might as well just get that sorted and set up and ready to go. But that is the end of the game. My opponent conceded, which makes sense. He only has 3 models left, and there are 4 quarters. I have no casualties and 9 models. So even if he was to survive, he doesn't have enough models to contest all objectives. So even if I just fell back and killed nothing else, I would definitely guaranteed get a win here. Overall, this game was really fun. His list was very interesting. He went for very much a thick boy cardio, but with the Gobapalooza Gloomspite Gitz version of it, and I think there's definitely some play here. I think the issue here is that Trogs, as good as they are, they're only toughness 5 and 28 wounds, which is very solid for their points, but a Brute Boss is strength 6, so when it comes to combating them, the Brute Boss is just really effective at killing them, making sure they don't get anything to do, and even with all their buffs, in turn 1, I avoided the buffs, it didn't matter. And the tempo of this list is very, very slow. Needing to put up 2 buffs to get to the level of a Brute Boss or to a Mytrog, who already has +1 attack, is very, very slow to get set up. And then you've also got to rely on Mesmerize from Boggle-Eye, which was, I think, the real breaking point here was that Boggle-Eye failed to land that net. If the Brute Boss was unable to get in and clobber that Troll, there's more of a chance that he could have ganged up on my weaker guys, clobbered down with his Trolls, and really just killed off my chaff, and left me with nothing else to play with, whilst the Brute Boss was netted over and over and over again. That didn't happen, and then my trap did just come together. I really wanted him to be clumped together, so I could kill his main force, and then clog up his reinforcements, which is exactly what happened. So I got a bit lucky on some of the dice rolls, I got a bit lucky on that net, but I think overall I played this game very, very well, and it was a lot of fun. Garred is an excellent player to play against. He's a lot of fun, he's very light-hearted, and he makes some really funky lists, and this is one of my favourite lists I've played in a long time. I think against a less smashy list like mine, it would actually do pretty well, and the Movement 5 Trogs are actually surprisingly fun. Movement 10 on a model that bulky is quite interesting. It's just a shame that they came up against something as burly and hard-hitting as a Brute Boss. I think Stormcast Eternals would have a field day against them as well. Anything that's really smashy and killy, so Ogres, Iron Jaws, Stormcast will really hamper this list, but against maybe other less killy lists, the power of those Trogs would really do well. 3 Trogs is hard to deal with in most cases, so you never know. I think there's definitely play here, and it was a fantastic game. And that's the end of the video. If you liked what you saw, then please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. These battle reports are a lot of fun to make, and using TTS lets me play against players around the world. I obviously operate from England, and I've played against multiple people in the States and across Europe, and it's been a lot of fun to do, and I would love to make more. I've tried to make some improvements in this one over the first one, and I hope to make more as time goes on. If you have any suggestions for improvements or matchups or anything else you'd like to see, let me know in the comments. And until next time, I'll catch you all in the next video. Ta-ra.